Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg, and your Colonial champion, Sean McCord. Welcome to the Court-Martail Podcast!
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome back to the Court-Martail Podcast, here to give you the hottest information about news in the wrestling world and two of the biggest smarts to talk about the wrestling news. I am the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg at your service, here to bring you the newest stuff that's going on in wrestling as we hit a little bit of a lull period between WWE Backlash and their next show, Money in the Bank, which Sean and Joshua and myself are very much looking forward to see that gimmick.
Oh yeah, love it.
And the sound of that is the sound of my co-host today, who is so enthusiastic about WWE Money in the Bank or anything AEW. Sean McCarty, how you doing?
Well, I'll tell you this. I am here and I'm happy that we are here today on this glorious of whatever day it is that this airs. But whatever time it is...
Recorded as of May 19th.
That's right. A very special day in the world of professional wrestling. So we thought it'd be nice to have that day just completely be ingrained in our skulls for even longer by adding another gimmick and catching us up on the news, which we have not done. Skylar, I don't even remember the last time we even talked about news in the wrestling world. So it's nice to be able to catch up, and it's why I wanted you to lead this, because this is really your bread and butter. So lead us into your intro, my friend.
Coming straight to you from the Golden Gate Garage, this is the Wrestle News with Skylar Greenberg.
That's right. It's the news of the week. And to really be honest, we're going to do the news of the professional wrestling world. And the way it's going to work is that me and Sean have like 4 or 5 different stories that we're going to bounce back and forth between each other.
Yeah.
I'll do one, Sean will do one, and we'll each introduce topics as it comes up, as it's interesting to us, or things that we want to update you, the people, on, because a lot of stuff has happened since WrestleMania. Stuff that we would have covered in normal news of the weeks, but now we really have to go back and like dig through all of them.
Yeah, and we had some scheduling conflicts. I mean, you went out to Poland and you had yourself a great time there. And, I was doing my thing with, Easter and being a church sexton and all that jazz. And Josh again was, existing. So, we couldn't quite.
And basically dealing with the glory that is South Carolina traffic, i.e. hitting a deer and his car catching on fire.
Yeah, definitely prayers up for Josh again. Not that anything's happened personally to him. He's just been going through it in a whole series of things going on. So he's, give your best well wishes to Josh again. Send cards, get well soon to Josh Ageddon's house. And he will greatly appreciate them, but make sure you send like 3 each, of the same card. Just write your name on it 3 times. Make sure you just inundate his mailbox. He loves mail. He loves opening mail. And he will be happy to hear from each and every one of you. He's got a lot of fans down there in TAW Gaming.
Especially with all that Beetlejuice stuff. Oh, wait. Darn it.
And now he's showing up at Josh Ageddon's house. So, and have fun, Michael Keaton. South Carolina is actually kind of freakier than you are. But we've done this format before, as far as the news of the week, as far as bouncing back stories. We brought to our little, sitting circle as we tell stories back and forth, like a good moth story. For those of you who listen to both this podcast and NPR, which I'm sure is a very small overlap, but you never know. Skylar, you're leading this thing, so why don't you go first?
Well, we're going to start with the most pressing story, which involves All Elite Wrestling.
Oh, wait,
and
Skylar. Before you continue, this seems like an appropriate time to do a little bit of a slogan here, just for the sake of the moment. So, Skylar, what do you want to talk about?
Screw you.
Go ahead, Sky.
AEW having problems with their TV shows.
Go on.
There. Happy?
I am as jolly as a Roger.
Boo. Anyways, so what happened was that AEW Collision was doing a special Beach Break edition episode, whatever you want to call it, tagline, whatever, on May 17th. And it was on its usual 2-hour time frame. What happened was that the show was cut off 30 minutes before the show was supposed to end due to technical issues.
But were they actually technical issues? Did something actually happen? Was there an incident? Or is it just technology? Because if there's anyone who understands technology just ruining a production, it's definitely you, myself, and Josh Geddon. So is there more to this story, or is this about as much as we know right now?
As far as what we know, and basically this has been a couple days after it happened, Tony Khan said there was a technical issue in the truck. The show could not continue, but they still recorded it, so the West Coast version was fine. It was the East Coast version that was airing first that had issues, but they were able to resolve it within a couple days. But, Sean, the irony of this, do you want to know what went on right after the show ended 30 minutes early?
Please, I would love to hear what wasn't aired.
Well, what happened was that 30 minutes, basically they had 2 matches that were supposed to air that did not air. And these matches, I feel so bad for Powerhouse Will Hobbs. I really do.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Although, given the fact that it was Lio Rush and Action Andretti and Will Hobbs versus Wheeler Yuta and a Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara match.
Oh, good God. Speaking of poor people, poor Dustin Rhodes.
No, he did it to himself.
I know, and he's tried to defend it, but still, oh, God.
But think about this. A tag match of Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara versus Lio Rush and Action Andretti and Will Hobbs versus Wheeler Yuta was kicked off 30 minutes for the Black Adam movie starring Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, that's hilariously funny.
Now, there is no proof of a conspiracy of the Johnson trying to screw over AEW, but I just find it really funny.
I mean, it's not that surprising that Johnson is sticking himself into other wrestling companies' affairs and going and screwing things up for somebody else. That sounds like pretty much trademark Dwayne Mark right there. And, you know, that's what he's known to do. It is kind of funny, though, that of all the things, and that movie, of all of The Rock's movies that could air, the one that people just despised. Well, until this UFC one, which have you heard some of the rating, what people are saying about this movie? It is rough. It is rough. And people are saying this is The Rock's Oscar movie. No. No. They say, like, the CGI is, like, really bad. Like, the, kind of like the Scorpion Kings actually wasn't terrible.
Yes, but that was one of his earlier movies. His later movies have gotten worse and worse.
Oh, no doubt. But, I'm just talking about the CGI people. That has nothing to do with The Rock. But even just some of it, but in any case, I don't want to talk any more about The Rock than we have to, but so what is the circumstance? They're saying it's a technical issue, but if something just aired right after that, that doesn't really make sense that it would just be a technical issue and they would just cut off the show. Unless the whole truck was being eaten by, like, squirrels. Which I guess is possible, but unlikely.
Here's the thing, is that at the end of the day, there was a technical issue. They won't say why, but they had to play the movie because the AEW was having issues. Does that not say WWE would never, ever cut off their show due to a technical issue because they actually have a very good production crew?
Yeah.
Versus whatever amateur worked for AEW.
Yeah, well, and the other thing, too, it's like with Tony at this point, if there was... Let's say that this was just a technical issue that they had to cut off the show, and that what is that telling Warner Discovery? And does that not completely like sum up the issues with AEW? You know, it's just they can't, even when they're trying to do things better, they just can't get out of their own way.
Well, supposedly Warner Brothers Discovery is happy with the ratings that AEW brings, which, my God, Warner Brothers has a very, very low standard if they're happy with a little more than 500,000 to 600,000 people.
Well, they made that very apparent by even renewing AEW in the first place. I mean, they saw the trajectory of where those fans were going. You know, it's why I really just don't get mad at AEW anymore, because they're getting, you know, Warner Discovery is the one condoning this little vanity project. So long as they're okay with putting it on television, you know, it's just going to sit there and exist, you know, on the side pantheon of whatever it is that wrestling is. But it's interesting how right now with the ratings, with the exception of a couple circumstances, when it comes to Dynamite, the ratings are pretty consistent now. They've kind of hit this plateau at the 630s or whatever it is, more or less. And they've been there for the better part of 2 months, and it kind of makes me think that this is basically it, right? It's not going to go up. Maybe it'll go down a little if they do something really stupid. But remember when Collision started and they were getting 645,000 people on average to watch that show?
Yeah, I remember.
And now here we are, and I guess this kind of leads to another, you know, with the talent that they have, and this leads to, what do you think, first of all, right now, about the talent, let alone Tony's booking of them, but just the talent roster of people in AEW right now?
It's big, it's bloated, there's nobody that's super important. It's WWE from about 6 years ago.
Well, and you know, you add in less coherent storytelling, if that's even possible, and matches going 6 times as long with everyone doing every move that's ever been done ever. But conversely, you also have more people who used to be names, like Will Ospreay and Kenny. Say what you want about Kenny, but he's still there, and they're trying to do something with the Hurt Business. They're one of the few things that actually is popping ratings right now. And I know that they're the Hurt Syndicate, but you know, I'm more of a the Hurt Business thing, and MJF joining that, and God, how much has MJF fallen?
The less that's said about him, the better.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, but this is working with what's happening, at least somewhat with what they're doing. And this leads me to a quote that I think it came from, let me see if I can find where it was. I think it was on Busted Open Radio. The former Baron Corbin, now known as somehow worsely named Bishop Dyer, had a comment to make about AEW wrestlers that don't put enough effort into their appearance. Did you see this quote? I'm going to read it anyway, but have you seen this?
No, I have not.
Okay, so here's the quote from Baron Corbin, now Bishop Dyer. What frustrates me sometime with AEW is you got Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and MVP, and they look like $1 million standing in the middle of the ring. They got fancy suits on, they look good, they have sunglasses, Dyer points out. But then the other two guys come out to cut a promo against them to potentially face them for the tag titles, and they look like shit. Tank tops. Doesn't look like you got a haircut or shaved. I think there's some guys that have to stop being so casual about their appearance on that show. And this, I read this out because I want to talk about something that you and I have mentioned a lot in the 5 years we've been doing this. And that's how important and integral presentation is to a wrestler. And when you look at AEW and you look, what in your eyes constitutes the look or the presentation of somebody? You know, because it's not always as nuanced as you just wear a suit and you go out there and you look sharp.
Right, because if everybody wore suits and sharp, they wouldn't be wrestlers now, would they?
Right. I mean, John Cena in anything other than jorts would not be John Cena.
What it is that you have to portray a character or a gimmick, whatever you want, whatever terminology you want to use. Kayfabe is dead, blah, blah, blah. When you are a wrestler, you go out there, you have to portray something. I'm an ass kicker. I'm a chicken shit. I'm brave. I'm scared. I'm an idiot. I'm smart. I'm whatever.
I'm incredibly jacked and will mow you over with spears.
I have to portray something that makes people want to see me and wants to pay a ticket to see me. That is the ultimate goal of professional wrestling, is that it is a business, not a vanity project. You have to go out there and you have to go out there and sell tickets to make money, because your goal should be try to make as much money as possible. And the way you do that is you make a character that is engaging to the point where the people will either cheer or boo you. It doesn't matter which, as long as the people are paying money to see you.
Right, and I'm sorry, go ahead, keep going.
Who does that in AEW now? Genuinely.
Well, I think the Hurt Syndicate do. They do, you know, as Corbin mentioned, you know, they look good. MJF still has a look. You know, it's just that the booking has buried him to shit, and his gimmick has gotten very stale because he's no different than he was 5 years ago, just kind of replicating all of the people that he's loved over the years.
Right, but let's ignore those examples. Look at the majority of the AEW roster. It is not engaging. Nobody stands out. Everybody's just a plain, boring-ass person. You have your Daniel Garcias, your Wheeler Yutas, your Jungle Jack Perrys, who I haven't even seen or heard of this year.
I'm not...
After he had such a big 2024.
Yeah, I'm not upset about that whatsoever. And, you know, it's not even trying to, like, denigrate the necessarily, like, the height or weight of these people. But, I mean, that does also factor in. Like, we've seen it firsthand. When people go from WWE over to AEW, and the prime examples I'll use are Jon Moxley and Adam Cole, the discipline for the body and the physique and what you wear just completely just gets thrown out the window. And it's not even just like, it's the tracksuit, like always wearing the tracksuit and, you know, just boring t-shirt or just your own t-shirt or stuff like that. It has to be beyond whatever I casually put on this morning, you know, when I went to the 7-Eleven to pick up a Slurpee. You know, there needs to be, and for those people who've been able to pull that gimmick off, there's a lot more other attributes of your presentation, like you mentioned, Sky, that make up for it. A la, like, describe Kevin Owens' presentation, even though what we've seen and said about him as far as what his garb is.
Right, and that's the thing, is that you can stand out in this type of attire that Kevin Owens had if you are engaging as a personality and engaging as a wrestler, which Kevin Owens can do. But everybody else on the AEW roster just cannot. And to Baron Corbin's point, or Dwyer, or whatever his terrible name is,
Bishop Dyer.
He makes a good point. Bishop Dyer. He makes a great point. Nobody in AEW stands out amongst a sea of wrestlers that aren't really wrestlers. You pluck the majority of the AEW roster and you put them in WWE, they are jobbers or lower mid-card fodder. Maybe Ospreay gets to like mid-card level. Maybe main event if you are very optimistic. But everybody else in the AEW roster should be thankful they don't have to work as hard as the WWE talent does.
Well, and Hobbs would go to developmental, I'm sure. I mean, we've seen the developmental program absorb a lot of older AEW talent, and look at what Penta and Phoenix are attempting to do on the main roster right now. So it's not like AEW didn't have the kind of talent to present in an adequate way, but it seems like now even the people that were big deals are now dressing down. Again, it's just an overall laziness in the presentation. Like Ospreay, he's wearing the track pants and just like it looks like he just got out of bed. Everyone's going for the K-Fed look, and I don't understand it. Even Okada, right? If you were going to present Okada like a star instead of just going out there saying bitch and leaving, you know, Moxley comes out there and he's just wearing, you know, the cargo pants that I'm sure have not been washed for at least 6 days.
I'm really interested to see what Ricochet looks like, because in WWE, he looks pretty good. I haven't seen any of his recent stuff, but I do know he's a tweener idiot gimmick. whatever you want to call it, annoying person.
Ricochet's off fighting people on Twitter, and he's got the, I don't even know what his gimmick is right now. And I mean, it's not even like he's trying to look different. It's just not work. It's not doing it for me. Maybe he's doing it for somebody else, but it's just not doing it for me. But the part of the problem is that if anyone had diversity in their move sets, you know, if anyone did anything that stood out, because everybody does everything. That's really the major problem. Everybody does everything. If people just were a little bit more selective about what kind of, you know, because their gimmick is not just about who you portray, what your gimmick, what your move set is a part of that. You know, it's a part of who you are. If people were more protective on that, I feel like you'd find more concrete identities in AEW.
Right. Now, I do thank you for mentioning Kevin Owens because he was my next bit of information.
Oh, go on.
So Kevin Owens is on a little bit of a promotional tour promoting the book by J.J. McGee. It's a little bit of an autobiography. Fight Forever, The Ballad of Kevin and Sami. Basically, this book is telling Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn's history as friends and rivals throughout their entire careers.
Because their matches have never, ever, ever ended. They're still going on as we speak.
Exactly, but this book is on sale, and I may go get the copy of it because this is a pretty good book that I may be interested in. And during this promotional tour, Kevin Owens did do a conversation on Sunday where he said that he has not yet undergone neck surgery. Quote, "I have not had surgery yet, despite reports to the contrary. We're still trying to figure out what the best way to rehab and go about it, exactly what needs to be done. So we're kind of still figuring it out. I hope to have an update in the next couple weeks."
Yeah, that concerns me a little bit.
Well, if he doesn't need surgery, if he just needs rehab, then maybe that will be better. But then I also think about what happened when Ridge Holland basically broke Big E.
Well, and I also think of, like, it's interesting because, like, you can see both sides of that argument because you've got the Ridge Holland and Big E thing, but at the same point, you know, say what you want about his work now, but the fact that he's even able to do it was, you know, Edge got that surgery, and then years later he was forced to retire as a result of having that surgery. And then it took a whole long set of rehab, and then eventually he came back like 9 years later. So it's like there's two sides of that coin. So it's I don't know if it's necessarily enthusiastic news, but I'm avid in following this because Kevin Owens really won me over and won over my heart over the past several years. And I feel kind of bad for saying all the shit that I said about him for so long, because he's really proven me wrong and has proven to be someone I value very highly on that program.
Kevin Owens to me is kind of like this generation's Mick Foley. He doesn't have the look of everybody else, but that's what makes him stand out, even if he's kind of shitty. Yes, he does a little bit too much of the garbage wrestling stuff, but when he gets on, he is on. And he is one of those guys that, good, bad, or indifferent, makes you want to watch and listen to him and watch him wrestle.
Yeah, he's always been captivating. You know, even when his physique was in really rough shape. You know, Kevin Owens in the past 5 years or so really did put in a lot of effort to trim up his figure and kind of change the gear too. Like, I respect Kevin Owens a lot for still not changing him, but also changing little things about him to kind of sharpen and tool and make him and kind of hone him into the man who was so good in that feud with Cody. And he's somebody who I think that because I think Mick Foley's a good comparison. You know, he wasn't necessarily the universally beloved guy because he was just so damn good as a heel so often. But I think people will look back on Kevin's body of work and he's given a lot to the WWE. And there were some times that Kevin Owens was one of the more interesting things on the entirety of WWE's spectrum of programming.
And hopefully this isn't the end of his career, but if it is, thank you, Kevin Owens, for everything.
Yeah, and I really hope it's not too. I really hope he's able to keep going at some point. You know, it probably won't look like what it was. You know, I can't imagine he will ever be able to work the style he was working the same way again. You know, with
Probably not.
And that also kind of leads to opportunity, though. Because we've seen some people really change themselves and alter who they are as a result of a major neck surgery, and then it becomes the best period of their career, a la Stone Cold Steve Austin. You know, it's interesting how sometimes that can transform itself into something that's truly different and magical. And if there's anyone who can do it, it's Kevin Owens. So we wish you the best, Kevin. We really do. And we were talking about the feud with Cody Rhodes. I want to talk about Cody Rhodes for a second. Now, this isn't really news. This is kind of just me wanting to, A, retread on the joke that I made earlier, and B, we saw Cody in the Wheatley commercial, and we were like, oh, he's been gone for a month. But, you know, I've really been thinking about how Cody, I don't want to say that he was buried, but his gimmick and his character and his aura was hurt quite sizably after what happened with The Rock and WrestleMania. And so my pitch to you, Skylar, is when should Cody come back, and what kind of Cody Rhodes should we see?
Well, here's something that I was going to bring up. It's not really big enough to be its own news, but it does relate to this story in a way. On May 17th, Cody Rhodes in his bio had one word to describe himself: quarterback. Reason being is that he nicknamed himself the quarterback of WWE. He was the leader. And on May 18th, people noticed that that tag was taken away and his bio is blank, which means that maybe Cody Rhodes doesn't view himself as the quarterback of WWE anymore because he doesn't have the title.
Well,
my thing at the end of the day is that Cody Rhodes, as the American Nightmare and the quarterback of WWE, it kind of ran its course. If anything, this is good for him because this allows him to freshen himself up. I don't know if it should be a heel turn. I don't think it should be a heel turn, especially with the rumors that The Rock is trying to push for that.
Still.
And the thing is that, to me, you turning Cody Rhodes as a heel, unless it is part of a bigger story, it's not worth it. It's not worth it, especially because John Cena is still in the middle of a heel turn that he's trying to make work.
Yeah, not
you
right
Cody
now.
Rhodes turn heel, it's going to cut that.
Yeah, you can't turn Cody right now. I mean, he's selling out crowds. I mean, Cody at the peak of his reign, I mean, his arenas, he was selling out arenas and people were clawing to see Cody Rhodes. You know, and I agree with you, Sky. I don't think he should be turning heel at all. Not now. But I also want, this actually brings up another point. And this is something that I have at least 3 people that I want to accost for this. There are a lot of people, veterans of this business, who feel like they need to speculate on what kind of money or what kind of personality somebody should have that's going to draw money. Meaning, remember when, in the middle of maybe the highest amount of heat that MJF had during his feud with Jericho, there was that story that came out that Jericho said that MJF is going to be a terrific babyface? And then it planted it in people's minds. And then when he did turn babyface, it was like, eh. But Jericho put that into the ether, right? He brought that into existence and put that in people's mind, and think ultimately diminished, you know, even if it's true, you know, doing that as kind of a self-preservation thing. And then Undertaker goes on his podcast, and 3 weeks into his podcast goes, Cody's real money's as a heel. And then we get this thing with The Rock. It's like, stop speaking people's heel and face turns into existence when they're making plenty of money or being very successful in the thing that they're doing. Let this happen organically, like it happened organically for y'all. And it's part of the problem of documenting all of this stuff, by the way. That's what the LFG, that's the big problem I have with LFG, is that doing all of this extra documentation of this behind-the-scenes stuff just ruins the drawing power of any of these heel or face turns really working long-term, because you've already spoken it into the place where people's minds and they're accepting it. I'm sorry, Skylar, go ahead.
Well, ironically, that does lead into my next thing. Speaking of veterans of the wrestling business, Ricky Morton posted this not yesterday on his social media. There's a picture of him at a convention with the sign, Heel Lives Matter. And what he says is the following, quote,
I'm sorry, go ahead. That's funny.
In today's business, being a legitimate, authentic heel is a dying art. Why? Because 90% of the guys want the cheers, even when they're supposed to be the ones getting booed. Everybody wants the pop, nobody wants the heat. But wrestling isn't just about the spotlight, it's about the story, and it takes two to tango. Without a true villain, there's no real hero. Without the boos, the cheers don't mean as much. So to the few out there still committed to being the bad guy, keep doing it.
Hard to argue with any of that.
Again, this is Ricky Morton peeking at the curtain but not breaking it.
The ultimate babyface, Ricky Morton.
And not... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying the ultimate babyface, Ricky Morton, out here defending the heels, but go ahead.
Yes, I know. Wrestling is dead. Whatever. The point is that Ricky Morton makes the great point.
He does.
People don't want the smoke. They don't want the booze. And we need more of it. But the problem is that we won't get it if the other veterans who are supposed to be the ones that are teaching the next generation are teaching the wrong things.
Or butting in when they're not needed. I'm not saying The Undertaker shouldn't be teaching people how to wrestle and how to tell a story. Obviously, his gimmick work speaks for itself. But I don't think we, the public, need to hear him talk about that. And I know that everybody and I know that he's Mark now, and he was gimmick for so long that he's just going to blibbity blab on absolutely everything. I get it. I understand why he's doing it, right? If there's anyone who's earned the ability to do that, it's him. That being said, they're going to push Cody to be a heel long before he should, and I worry about Cody, man. I worry that they're going to burn him out before it's time to burn him out.
But again, it depends on the context of what the heel turn is and what the heel turn is going to be. For example, and I'm going to say this right now because I think this is an idea I have. I don't know if it works, but I want to try something. Okay?
Go on.
Allow me to paint a picture for you.
Please do. Here's a paintbrush.
The rumored SummerSlam match is John Cena versus CM Punk.
Okay.
Let's say Cody Rhodes shows up, costs CM Punk the title because he wants John Cena and nobody else.
Okay.
Triple threats at Survivor Series. CM Punk versus Cody Rhodes versus John Cena. Cody Rhodes turns heel, screws over Punk, takes the title, and retires John Cena. CM Punk wins the Royal Rumble, and we get CM Punk versus Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, and that should main event at WrestleMania, but God, I don't think Cody should turn heel this year. I think they've got more time on a vengeance run.
But when do you turn him heel?
I think you've got to, well, I mean, The Rock is the big X factor and all that, because whenever The Rock fucking feels like it is half of the time. But...
And that's the problem, is that if they're never going to do Cody Rhodes versus The Rock one-on-one, then there's no point to keeping Cody Rhodes a babyface forever. And the thing is that people, whether you like it or not, were starting to kind of turn on him because they don't exactly want the babyface to be the babyface forever. Or at least if they're going to have the babyface be forever, they need somebody that the fans can cycle in and out. That's why they really need to figure out what the heck they're going to do with Cody Rhodes and stick to it. If you can keep him a babyface, fine. Keep him a babyface. If you're going to do heel, fine, do heel. But pick one or the other.
Yeah, and you know, I the thing to me is this. I don't think Cody should be the one to take the title back off of John Cena. I actually genuinely think that should be saved for CM Punk. I think Punk's got to be the one. And actually, I think that should be the last match. I think that makes the most sense for them to be the last match. But, you know, I could be wrong about that. But But in any case, with Cody, I don't think turning him heel this year makes sense, but he needs to have fire, right? He needs to have a vigor and a vengeance, and he's going to have to pull the trigger like he did. Remember when he did that thing with AJ Styles after the match, and we were all, and or at least I was like, isn't that kind of heelish? But then he doesn't do it, and he, leaks out of it or doesn't do it when it comes to John Cena, and I don't get the difference, right? Like, I don't get, why was he willing to kill AJ Styles, but not willing to kill John? So the inconsistency in that booking is rather annoying to me. So he's got to go back to what he was doing with AJ Styles and just throw the stairs at John's face. Metaphorically speaking, that is. He needs to get a Dusty level revenge.
What if we're doing it literally? What if we are finally, Cody Rhodes is snapped and maybe finally wants to basically attack John Cena? I think the other thing too is that you have to remember that AJ did get involved with Cody's mom. It would have been better if AJ had slapped his mom.
Yeah. He just yelled at her.
And we said at the time of that review of Clash at the Castle Scotland, but the point still stands. AJ Styles got in the face of Cody Rhodes' mom, and Cody Rhodes got really pissed and attacked AJ. Cody Rhodes has to be wronged in order for him to reach the new levels of babyface fire that he has. And he's been wronged by John Cena, not once but twice. But Cody Rhodes also really got a lot over on John Cena on the build to WrestleMania. The booking has been inconsistent. And that's another thing, too. Triple H is starting to waver a little bit on his booking. I don't know if you felt it, but I don't feel as confident. I'm hopeful this is just like a rough patch, and also having to get past The Rock's stupid booking nose.
Yeah, that really hurts.
Sticking his nose into it.
Yeah. But even without
really
The Rock's
I'm concerned about WWE's booking going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the level of disastrous that Vince was. It's never going to get to that point again, I don't think.
Or at least you don't hope.
Yeah, well, if Triple H's brain rots that quickly, then that's a different issue altogether. But no, I feel like to some degree, and we kind of talked about it the last time we met Skylar, I think Triple H has just hit that wall. He's just hit that wall of, all right, I've used pretty much all of my good shit, and now I don't know what to do from here. And we've seen it happen with inconsistent storylines, things just being dropped, for an injury or whatever reason, then they're just off television and you don't see them again. And, and it's going to, and you can tell that there's a certain level of special attention being paid to some and not others, which is fair. You kind of have to do that based on your star level. But I think you and I combined have probably said the words, I'm worried about or I'm nervous about so-and-so quite frequently over the past several weeks. Even in the State of Wrestling videos we were doing before WrestleMania started, it was starting to feel that way. I don't think it's going to be to a position where it's going to be of just utter disgust or rage from us the way it was on such a consistent basis with Vince. But that being said, you got to find a way to add more coal to the fire. Otherwise the train's just going to go to a complete stop. And because they're making more money despite themselves, even more despite themselves than they were before, that also brings to the question of, like, what are their priorities, and does it even matter to them what the product looks like?
And that's the thing that I'm ultimately concerned about, is what is this going forward? Jeff Cobb's name being changed to JC Mateo, like, God.
You could have just kept it Jeff Cobb. You could have just kept it
I'm guessing Jeff Cobb didn't want his name trademarked. The WWE didn't want to pay for the trademark or whatever.
But
I don't know.
I
don't know. The El Grando Americano, like, please stop. Let this AAA show happen and get it over with, please.
I don't hate this grunt. I want to see Chad Gable just be Chad Gable, but at least Gable's having fun with this one. At least...
But it's just going to lead to, like, the It's an American versus luchadors.
Well,
Great, whatever.
great,
Boo.
great segue, Skylar, because I think this is what going to be probably the thickest one of all, because there's a lot of implications to this whole situation. It was announced at WrestleMania that Triple H had acquired well, that's true. Triple H had acquired Triple A, and then said, ha, ha, ha.
Fuck you, Mexico.
I'll see myself out. Anyway.
Yes, the Triple E of Triple H acquired the Triple A of Triple M.
Yeah. Well, and dumb anagram jokes aside, this is obviously a major deal because this is a territory that WWE has desperately been trying to sink their fangs into and inject with their venom. And they finally found a way in with AAA. And now they're doing this when Worlds Collide pay-per-view, which is in June?
I thought it was... wait, hold on. Was it Memorial Day weekend or something?
It might be Memorial Day weekend. I don't know because I haven't really been paying that much attention to this AAA thing as far as that angle is concerned. But there's a lot of wrestlers that they have signed now. I mean, we saw El Hijo de Vikingo at WrestleMania. I didn't want to, but we saw it. And
so it's June 7th in Inglewood, California, which is big American lucha, basically, area.
Well, that'll mean that the crowd's going to be hot.
I mean, they're having it at the Kia Forum. Like,
wait, so are they doing that show before Money in the Bank?
Yes, they're having it the same weekend.
Are they having it the same day? Isn't it earlier in the day? Because June 7th, I'm pretty sure, is Money in the Bank.
Oh my God, they're doing two events in Los Angeles.
They're doing a double header? Oh my God. And I thought Vince just taking WCW and burying it with the Invasion was bad. Oh, God damn.
So I'm guessing that Worlds Collide is going to be... Yeah, Worlds Collide is going to be the daytime show, and Money in the Bank is going to be the nighttime show.
Yeah, so if you're feeling like having 9.5 hours of wrestling on a Sunday, fuck church, fuck going to any sort of religious ceremony, fuck going grocery shopping to the 3 grocery stores, because one of the grocery stores has good produce, and the other one has a good butchery, and then the other one has a good deli, and anyway.
But the point is that WWE is so hot, they could probably sell out both arenas in LA with just lucha fans going to the lucha show and regular people going to the regular show.
Well, but this is also going to have a ripple effect, too. Now that WWE has basically taken half of the lucha experience of Mexico, they've got CMLL on the other side of that now, which is, they're...
Who is basically with AEW in that kind of like... It basically transforms Mexico into another war ground for WWE and AEW to do battle.
Yeah, it's a game of Risk, basically, and CMLL is Jordan Peele sweating right now. As this is, because the truth be told, it's a weird amalgamation. It's a weird pairing because of what lucha is, but now WWE gets to tell a much different story, as we heard at WrestleMania when Penta got credentials for his AAA titles, and all of a sudden they had more credentials as far as the kind of championships they had and they could feature. And it also makes more sense as to why we're seeing a lot more. Does this now put away the need to have like one mainline lucha star on WWE programming?
If anything, what this does is that it provides them a pipeline to have more lucha stars.
Right, but that also means, but that way they're not just looking for the next Rey Mysterio. They could have several smaller, I don't want to say smaller, but like several like mini Mysterios as far as star level is concerned, and they're satisfied with that.
I mean, we'll see what happens. The one thing it kind of does is that WWE has always been on especially under Triple H, a global kind of...
assault.
Global wrestling territory takeover. Vince McMahon destroyed the territories in order to take over the United States of America. And then by default, because he became the biggest company in the United States, became the biggest company in the world. But his ambitions didn't really go that far because, honestly, Vince, especially in the latter half, was content to milk the American market. But what Triple H has done, especially with Nick Khan as his business partner and working with UFC, which is a big international MMA company, is that WWE is trying to be a big international wrestling promotional brand because they're trying to take over the entirety of the world and the wrestling world within it. We already know about what they're doing with TNA, and TNA is basically located in Canada. So they're basically getting that front, which also TNA is doing a Worlds Collide-esque event in Canada in a couple weeks.
Yes.
They have AAA now. They're partnering up with the the Japanese wrestling shows that aren't New Japan because they're trying to get a foothold in the Japanese market. They're working with Evolve. They're doing stuff in the UK. I've heard some rumors about them trying to do stuff in Germany and the other European countries because they want to go back to Europe too. I've heard stuff with India and China and South Africa and all the other countries around the world. They're trying to build out a worldwide wrestling brand under WWE as Triple H wants.
Well, and it's very fascinating to see how this, because we saw this, at least the template for it begin with NXT and NXT UK when they started working on that. Remember they had like the NXT Japan that lasted a hot cup of coffee? And
right, the very famous photo was Triple H pointing up to a picture on a slideshow with the NXT logo in several countries around the world.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it never came to be, partially because COVID ruined it. But now this is Triple H's attempt to try and rebuild that. And they realize, why establish something when we can take the thing that already exists and build it out from there?
And honestly, it's what's going to make them, it's what they've needed to do for a long time, truth be told. I also think, kind of to your point, Sky, that once Vince acquired WCW, he felt like there was nothing left to conquer, right? He had been satisfied with his kingdom. You know, once Triple H got a hold and then got the partnership with Endeavor, which has got so many different feelers and contacts throughout the world, and especially with like the Saudi Arabia deal already in place, you know, and with WWE ID, and now they're still keeping like an eye on the territories on the American market. But it makes you wonder, what in, let's say 10 years, what is the main roster going to look like? Is it going to be something where WWE is more strictly related to American style wrestling and they have their own network of territories that WWE is overseeing, that they kind of become their own NWA, but just owning everything? I don't know how else to phrase it.
Well, basically what this is going to become is that WWE is going to have so many different areas to have developmental talent come out of. If we're assuming that TNA is the Canadian branch, AAA is the Mexican branch, if they put Evolve as like a pseudo-American branch, obviously NXT is going to be like the place where they all go together in order to basically like learn the WWE system. But they're going to have these regional stuff to look for people, bring them over to the NXT, then polish them up before they put them on the main roster. Or they may just call them up right away. At the end of the day, you look at what they're doing with all their international signings, whether it's the Jordan Grays, the Julias, Stephanie Vacours, the Penta, Phoenix. They're definitely pushing towards being not just an American wrestling company, but a worldwide wrestling company. That's, again, why we get the international pay-per-views like Bash at Berlin, like Backlash in France, and stuff like Worlds Collide. They're doing the things that wrestling fans want people to see, which is dream matches that make money.
Well, and they're testing markets, too, which is also incredibly smart. And this also comes on the heels of them drastically reducing the number of house shows that there are now, which is good for talent's health. I mean, it's not good for talent's work, is because consistency really helps your game. But it's an interesting way that WWE is trying to shape and mold what wrestling looks like for generations to come without any sort of competition as to what, any sort of difference in formatting. to the WWE, but this is the first step to doing it. And it's going to be interesting to see how ambitious they get and whether they, try to approach. Will they ever find their Waterloo? And is that going to be at the hands of The Rock, I wonder?
You almost imagine it's going to be at the hands of The Rock.
Yeah. And, I don't know. Why, Dwayne? Why are you fucking this up for all of us? Why? Why did you have
because
to?
Because he wants to.
I know, but we like wrestling too, man. It's like, why can't we just enjoy the thing that we've dedicated so much time bitching about? Like, that's all I want is to enjoy my wrestling. And, it's not that I don't. It's not that I don't. It's just that people make it hard sometimes. People make it very hard sometimes. And
well, here's the thing. I just want to go over this with you because I want you to listen to this and listen to the shows that WWE is planning to do or are doing. Okay?
Let's do it.
So, May 24th, Saturday night's main event.
Yep. With Cena and R-Truth on it.
Right. NXT branded show, May 25th, Battlegrounds.
That might have some good stuff.
June 7th, NXT Worlds Collide, June 7th, and then with Worlds Collide, and then same day Money in the Bank.
Double header, God. God bless anyone who actually tries to watch all of it.
Right. Next one, June 28th, Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, great.
SummerSlam, August 2nd, August 3rd, in MetLife Stadium in Rutherford, New Jersey.
Well, let's hope that nobody tears their Achilles after 4 spots.
Oh my God.
Aaron Rodgers jokes will never not be funny. That will never not be one of the all-time funniest moments I have ever seen in Jets history. That was classic.
And if they do, please let it be the Aaron Rodgers of WWE, Charlotte Flair.
Yeah. I agreed.
But again, August 2nd and 3rd, SummerSlam at MetLife Stadium. August 31st, Clash in Paris.
It's going to be an interesting show.
October 11th, Crown Jewel in Perth, Australia.
That's going to be a very interesting show.
But again, my point is that look at all these shows. They're going international. They're going out to places to bring out the international things. We're going back to France. And the French are going to be crazy for that show.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Australians, especially for Rhea Ripley main events.
Yeah, WWE is, right now, no matter what the cool down feeling is in America right now and on the internet, that is 100% irrelevant. Because what they're doing right now with all of these international markets, they could care less what the American market is doing right now, because they've realized it's run its course. Vince nearly killed them. We will take what we can get from America, but there's so much more money everywhere else. And considering that we're selling every single piece of the mat to the highest bidder now, it's just give hungry hippos there at TKO.
And the thing is that the only competition that WWE has is themselves and whatever Tony Khan's attempts to try and promote the show is. I don't care that AEW had the flag put in the top of Mount Everest by Darby Allin. Yes, it's very cool that he put the flag at the summit of Mount Everest. Who cares?
Well, I want to kind of just direct something, because I'm glad you mentioned that, because I told you before the show I was going to bring this up. So, yes, Darby Allin actually climbed Mount Everest, and every single cut on his back bled mercilessly. He's fine. He's fine, by the way. As far as I know, he's still coming down the mountain, I'm assuming. But my thing is this. When you look at AEW right now, and you do see that the American market has cooled off a little bit for WWE, and there's a little bit more of a script flipping, like you and I talked about earlier, about Triple H and his booking and the confidence that was in the system right now is a little less confident than it was before. What would other than the obvious, other than the actual fix and the actual answer, what can AEW do to capitalize on this brief, ever so brief lull that they found the WWE in? Can they climb the mountain to get even anywhere close to being something that anyone would even want to bother watching, let alone in the realm of the numbers that WWE is putting, just as a valued second?
Okay. Can I answer your question with another question?
Of course.
Next weekend, Memorial Day weekend. Thank you, Tony Schiavone.
Thanks, Tony.
It's AEW's Double or Nothing in Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix, huh?
Do you know this? Do you know this card?
I have not heard the card, but before you read me the card, it goes to show. Okay, it goes to show what kind of routing. We were just talking about WWE's routes internationally, and even the major shows. Like, say what you want about the Jets, but MetLife and New York is a huge wrestling crowd. Phoenix couldn't even keep the Coyotes, and you're expecting them to draw big for AEW for a major show? Like, I don't know. That's a weird market to choose. For a major show.
Well, it's a B pay-per-view before their big A show, which is All In at Global Life Field in Texas.
Right.
Double or Nothing would probably be akin to like what we just had with Backlash. But let me read this card and tell me if any match even partially interests you.
Okay.
Mark Briscoe versus Ricochet in a stretcher match.
See, sadly, if the context was right, that might not suck. But knowing Tony, it will absolutely suck, and there's no chance Mark Briscoe's winning.
Wait, which Tony? Schiavone or Khan?
Either.
Oh, so they both suck. Okay, copy.
Yes. This is established.
Well, especially Schiavone.
Yes. Particularly Schiavone, but Tony Khan as well.
Okay. FTR with Stokely Hathaway versus Daniel Garcia and the returning Nigel McGuinness.
Oh, I like Nigel McGuinness, but I will. You know how we were? You said about Dustin Rhodes earlier that he did it to himself, and remember I said I felt bad about Dustin Rhodes.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad about FTR because they did it to themselves, and they were great workers. But they really expose themselves and the kind of attitudes they have towards wrestling by sticking with what they've stuck with, especially considering what has happened with the WWE. And I know timing was weird with that because Vince was still kind of there. But at the same point, they had the opportunity, and they were maybe the last chance that tag team wrestling had. I really do believe that now. It's sad to say that. I'm very defeated about tag wrestling. I hope I'm wrong at some point, but I don't feel it. I don't feel it now. But
and also Nigel McGuinness getting in a match, a commentator going on to the wrestling scene because a wrestler got mad at the commentator. I wonder where I've heard this.
Well, yeah, and I mean Nigel had come back a little bit earlier before. God, how long was it? Jesus, that was not a year ago. How long was it?
Yeah, against Bryan Danielson.
Yeah, that was forever ago. And so, I mean, it's...
But Nigel is no Pat McAfee.
Not at this stage, I regret to say, but keep going.
Yeah. Timeless Tony Storm versus Mina Shirakawa.
God, ever so often a Tony Storm bit comes across my feed, and I'm just, that is the silliest, fucking hammiest gimmick. It's like the people love it for whatever reason, but it's just not for me. I don't know. And I like Tony Storm's in-ring work, when she's not doing that bloody match that she had with, who was it, Mariah May? But oh God, man, and Mina Shirakawa, I say not enough information to even be able to tell you what she does or if it looks any good.
Well, that's the thing, is that Mina Shirakawa is one of, like, the Japanese women's wrestlers. Like, I guess if you want to call it, like, the top Japanese women's wrestlers. But the thing is that, like, does anybody know who she is?
Well, clearly I don't, because I just said not enough information, you know. So, yeah, good point. Continue.
But that's kind of the thing, is that, like, this is Tony Khan bringing in somebody from Japan and expecting his fans to know who it is, but not properly promoting it to the American people.
Right, at least
The
WWE tried to bring in Penta and at least explain what he was there for and why he was there. But continue.
Yeah. The Hurt Syndicate defending the AEW World Tag Team Championships against Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara, the Sons of Texas.
Well, that match has
That's
the
probably gonna be
potential
the
to
best
not.
match on the card.
That match has the potential to not suck, and that is about as high a praise as I could give to a match that you've listed off of this card right now.
So, except as long as Sammy Guevara keeps his instincts of being an idiot behind him.
Well, he's in there with 3 pros. That's probably going to be the best Sammy Guevara has looked in a while.
Probably. The Owen Hart Women's Cup Final. The winner faces the AEW Women's World Champion at Allin in Texas in June.
Oh, Christ.
Jamie Hayter versus Mercedes Moné.
Caramba.
Mercedes is definitely winning, and we're getting Mercedes versus Tony Storm.
Mercedes Moné, just, you want to talk about one of the steepest falls from grace since that whole taking a stand against WWE and then believing that she was worth Charlotte Flair money, which not even Charlotte is worth Charlotte Flair money anymore. So, and God, and I still feel like, right now Charlotte's the better worker. Think about what I'm saying when I say that.
But the thing is that, again, as much as we rag on AEW, that's their best option. Because is Jamie Hayter going to sell the tickets?
They've tried, not with Tony trying to present them, because like we've said earlier, presentation's key, and Tony doesn't have a clue. And that's the biggest part of the problem. There was probably a time when Jamie Hayter could have sold some tickets, but at this point, that horse has long left the barn.
It doesn't help also that Britt Baker wouldn't do the match.
Yeah, it doesn't help that she didn't want a job because, you know, Britt Baker believed that she is the queen of AEW. She's the Charlotte Flair of AEW. And it also doesn't help that WWE is buying up all these other territories, further cutting off any chances of them getting any more quality talent. So it's a quadruple-edged sword all pointed at Tony. Both Tonys.
Yes. And then the last match, the Owen Hart's men final. The winner gets an AEW World Title shot at All-In. Adam Hangman Page versus Will Ospreay.
I can't believe
here's the thing.
Adam Page has
the way that the story is going, they're setting up Adam Page to be the main character again.
I mean, anybody's better than Moxley at this point. I don't even care if it's Adam Page.
I don't agree with you.
I don't know. Adam Page is
Do we want to put Adam Page in charge again?
Well, what? How much more harm could it do? At this point, Warner Discovery doesn't have any standards. Tony Khan is clearly not going to suffer or take any damage from the shame he gets booking this fodder. And if Adam Page is the guy that beats Moxley for it, and that means we don't get to see Moxley come out and tank the ratings every time he appears or threatens to appear, then I don't know. I still I'm not saying that Adam Page is not still the scumbag that ruined AEW. I still believe that. Very much so. Having said that, is he really going to do any more harm at this point? Can he possibly do more harm at this point?
You're not wrong. At this point, they're all self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah, it's like, you know, not for nothing, Adam Page got everything he wanted, and it didn't make a damn bit of difference for him. And that ultimately is the payoff of that whole situation. So it's like, whatever, just get Moxley off the television. I'm just so done with him. And honestly, the fans are clearly done with him, because every time he appears, the fans disappear. And then when something else is on there, they come back. They're like, is he gone? Are we safe? And then they show up again. And then get run off by the Young Bucks, and then that's that. But that's the problem, is the Tony Khan does not have an eye for talent, and that's three-quarters, let alone his booking. But he doesn't have an adequate eye for talent to even make his booking make sense. And it's why we are where we are.
He still thinks he's doing a good job.
Of course, because Warner Discovery didn't tell him no. His dad had never told him no. So, and nobody else is telling him no. And everybody who does either goes home indefinitely and then starts making a lot of money for the other company. Funny that. But
I don't know, man. I really don't know.
I don't know, but the reason I brought this up is that I want to believe that there's someone out there, and this is somebody who grew up on WWE, and I see what they're doing, and I appreciate that. But I like also some competition that I can actually enjoy. You know, the NWA is a joke. Let's be real. It's a complete joke. And it's marketed terribly.
And every other wrestling company is either going on the WWE or AEW side. There will never be another third company unless you consider Hulk Hogan's promotion.
Well, and that's a joke already without even having a TV deal in place, because it's like, at least with Tony Khan, there was a hope, even though considering the people that he associated himself with, that maybe Tony would be the one to present it in a way that actually drew. Turns out, no, he could not. But it's just now, because he's got so much capital and him being able to lure people with money, it makes me sad that, like, this is the landscape of wrestling for a while. And it always changes one way or the other and fluctuates, but it's just sad, because I feel like WWE is now kind of at the point where some of, like, the major banks are, where it's just like, there are banks, and then there's JP Morgan. You know, it's just a different pantheon. And I think that's kind of where WWE is, and I just want to see some of these smaller banks be able to, you know, I'm not necessarily saying put up a fight, but at least exist without the influence.
Well, the problem is that I don't think there's going to be any change anytime soon. I think it's just going to be as it is. And AEW is going to continue on the path they're going to do, which is to go down to 500 and then go down to 400 and go down to 300 as the years go on, because their talent is getting suffocated. Meanwhile, WWE finds new talent to promote and push and make money with.
Yeah, and you know, it'll be interesting to see when it comes time to renewal again for AEW, what actually happens, especially because we don't know what the state of Warner Discovery is going to be by then.
True. Now, here's the thing. I'm done with all my stories. Do you have any other stories you wanted to cover?
Well, I want to end off, and then we'll go to our first commercial break and come back probably when we watch only Money in the Bank. Unless you really feel like watching When Worlds Collide, but I like the world without collision. Both in AEW and in planetary form. But I just want to do just a little homage. It's not going to be a huge, you know, let's go through his whole career superstar spotlight, but I just want to do a little tip of the cap to Sabu, who passed away at 60. And now I don't want to get into the whole rigmarole of, like, the controversy of his last match with Joey Janela. You know, he did a retirement match 2 weeks before he died, and there's a whole goo-ga about that. I don't really want to get into that. I kind of want to respect Sabu for his body of work more than just the swamp fodder that happens with wrestling. You know what I'm saying?
Agreed.
Yeah, so I just want to take a moment to establish what I believe to be Sabu's legacy is on the wrestling business, because I think that there's something unique about Sabu that differentiates himself, let alone being the nephew of the Sheik, but that separates himself from the other hardcore style wrestlers of his day.
Feel free. Go ahead.
It seems like Sabu knew how to work before he ever started doing like the crazy hardcore stuff. And a matter of fact, it seemed more like, especially with the triple jump and some of the stuff that Sabu was doing, nobody else was doing that when he was working for the Dennis Coralluzzo shows in the NWA, which eventually led to, the Eastern Championship Wrestling iteration. And Sabu was one of the major components to that getting off the ground. As that slowly became part of it, and Sabu started doing things that I think a lot of what made him special got marred by the fact that everybody else was doing all of the hardcore stuff as well, where Sabu was one of those people who was very unique, kind of like a Mick Foley or a Terry Funk, that could make hardcore work for their wrestling, not wrestle hardcore. Do you know what I mean by that?
I kind of get it, but go and explain for the people who don't know.
So what I'm saying is that Sabu could wrestle a match without using weapons to tell the story. But Sabu also could use the weapons as a means to further tell the story, as opposed to, let's hit each other with furniture and just beat the piss at like a New Jack match. Play the music, let's just hit you with goddamn everything. Let's set the table on fire. What ECW became, that kind of, let's do crazy, put you through shit and hit you with shit for the fun of it, the CZW flavor, as opposed to having the brutality be a tool for the story you're telling in the ring through the context of the wrestling you're doing. And it's something that I think Sabu did very well, especially considering the matches that he had with like Rob Van Dam, and where, they were back and forth. There was a lot of athleticism involved. There was a lot of high jumps. There was, a lot of that high-end stuff before people were doing a lot of the major flips of that description, and stuff that Sabu was very unique for, that I think got tragically lost amidst everybody else starting to kind of hit the groundswell of kind of the less nuanced form of that style. And I feel like that hurt Sabu for a lot of his career, especially starting in that late 90s, heading into the 2000s, and then when he showed up in WWE and he was like a third of what he was capable of doing.
But that was also, again, later stage Sabu, when his body was starting to fall apart, because how could it stay up with that style of wrestling he did?
Yeah, wrapping the barbed wire around him, and he was still, and he was able to me, he had the scars all over his body to where that almost became part of his look, and it made him mystical in a way. And I
don't know if you want to call it mystical. To me, Sabu is what Jon Moxley is trying to be.
Yes.
In that hardcore, dangerous, unpredictable wrestler, but Sabu was actually dangerous and unpredictable. There was no doubt he could back up everything that he did in the ring because of the amount of dangerous stuff he put his body through. And again, he's not much of a talker, quote unquote, but he is one of those guys who goes out and does his stuff and can be a dangerous person in the ring that Jon Moxley just cannot be.
Right, and the thing with Sabu is that he didn't really need to do much of the talking to get the points across, because, he let, like you said, he let his actions speak for it, but he also knew how to do a wrestling style that made the brutality justified, kind of like the way the Sheik was, or Abdullah the Butcher was, or even Brody, where that just throw him around and beat the hell out of him for the believability's sake. And I think Sabu was transformative in a way where he was kind of ahead of the curve of the entertainment half of that hardcore style while still keeping an aura of believability, to your point. And it's just a shame to me, because I don't think that if you look at prior to his death, I don't know if you would look at Sabu's body of work as that transformative, but it really was for a time when the industry was changing and kayfabe was really about to go out the window, you know, and Sabu seemed he was right at the time he needed to be, but got buried under a lot of the kind of the flow of the moment that caught everybody at that time.
I think the thing with Sabu that kind of like makes him one of the most interesting wrestlers is that he's kind of like the exact snapshot of the changing of the wrestling scene in the 90s. From it being the traditional wrestling territory to becoming the hardcore stuff that was becoming prominent to eventually shifting to the entertainment. But I encourage anybody that has the ability to go back and look at the feud that Sabu had with Rob Van Dam in ECW.
It's so good
in the 90s.
It's so good.
That is one of the highlights of ECW, and the feud that kind of put ECW on the map was Sabu versus Rob Van Dam.
Yeah.
Because those two guys had arguably one of the most intense rivalries and legitimately made you feel like they hate each other. And again, goes back to the whole thing that Ricky Morton was talking about earlier. People who legitimately are bad guys and you want to see them get their asses kicked.
Well, and the funny thing is that ECW had no problem blurring the lines between those two things. But at the same time, if you look at these Sabu and Van Dam matches, Sabu and Van Dam are wrestling a third of a match before Van Dam ever gets a chair and does a Van Daminator or the leg drop onto the guardrail or any of that, right? There's things going on that set the stage for all of these things, rather than just moving from furniture to furniture to furniture. It's masterclassmen being able to utilize that brutality to their advantage and satisfy the thirst of what those crowds at ECW really were, without it being just bloodthirsty carnage that lost a lot of the nuance to it. And so just rest in peace, Sabu. I really just wanted to give you a little shout out because his legacy, I think, is going to look very favorably upon him in the long run.
Well, it depends, because I know a lot of people had issues with a lot of the comments that he made personally. And we're not here to discuss that.
Yeah, that was...
You can make those judgments if you want to. I just choose to look at the wrestler.
Yeah. This is a body of work discussion. We could talk about the kind of person he was, where there was, you know, every bodily fluid imaginable in the hotel room. And there are plenty of stories to lineate into that. But as far as what his impact was on the business itself, he's a very interesting cross. Like you said, he's kind of a right place, right time, and ultimately will be regarded as such. And so rest in peace, Sabu. I just wanted to put a little bit of peace into that. And a good note to end on, I think.
Agreed. And thank you, Sean, for joining me as we talk over the whole thing of wrestling and going over the story of wrestling throughout the past couple months. And we will continue to track those stories as they move forward.
Absolutely. And I will see you, for Money in the Bank then?
Yes, unless we decide to talk about AEW Double or Nothing.
Yeah, unless something crazy happens. And you know what? It's the world of professional wrestling, so you never know.
John Cena, what are you doing in the AEW zone?
Boy, that's
Talk about ruining wrestling.
That'll put some butts into the seats. But folks, speaking of, it's time to go to our first commercial break. So if you got to get up and pee and get some popcorn, now's the time. We will be right back. We'll see you for Money in the Bank right after this.